What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Made You a Mixtape podcast. I'm your host, Jason. Now, joining me on this week's show is perhaps the backbeat of the entire city of Ottawa. He has held the beat for such luminaries as Tammy Raybould, Artificial Joy Club, Sal's Birdland, Thermocline, Carole Pope, David Gogo. I'm running out of breath here. The Robert Farrell Band, Rainwater Whiskey. It's Andrew Lamarche. Andrew, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Thanks so much. Doing really good. It's Friday. Always like Friday.
It's Friday. You really can't go wrong with it. Of course, we're going to release this on a not Friday, but we'll just pretend it's. So whenever you're listening to this, just pretend it's Friday and everything is okay.
Every day's a Friday for me.
Now I started to list just a few of the bands there and some of the artists, and you've had a long, if you were to actually write down, and you have on your website, if you were to write down every single artist that you've actually worked with, is it close to 100? Because it seems like it's almost there.
Yeah, I've never actually added it up, but it's got to be close to that. And I mean, I think there's probably stuff on there I've missed or haven't added to my website. I know there's recordings I've done that I haven't kept track of in any way. So it sounds like a good number. Sounds right to me.
Now let's start from the beginning. And I know this is probably going a ways back. Let's start from the beginning. What was it that got you behind the kit in the first place?
Oh, well, I mean, that's going back. I think I started playing when I was about 11. I'm not really sure how it happened, but I think I saw someone playing drums as a kid and was just drawn to that. I was never really into sports or was good at sports or anything like that. And I think it was just seeing someone play, and then something about it just struck me, and I started taking drum lessons and then jamming with friends and learning from there. But I mean, there was no real musical influence in my family or anything like that. Around when I started playing drums, my brother started playing guitar, so that was a good jamming from there, learning off that, playing with tapes and the radio and stuff, and just figuring it out from there. A lot of self-taughtness, I think I have an experience on the spot, but definitely did take lessons early on, and I just got drawn to it.
Now, I've asked a number of the musicians that have come onto this show, so I'm going to ask you as well. This last year, or getting close to a year and a half, has been absolutely decimating for the music industry as a whole. Without having live music to be able to go perform, to go see, and all that. How has that affected you over this past year and a half? Because I know you've also been doing a number of collaborations and just online performances as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, it was the shift to all that of I've always recorded from home by myself and just sent tracks out. So moving to that all the time was a bit different, not getting out and gigging in front of a live audience, but collaborating I've always done. So I already knew how to do all that, like do tracks from home and send the stems out. And then started just doing collaboration videos a bit more over the last year too. There's a guy in Russia, Igor, that I've been doing stuff for lately, and he'll edit these. I'll send him my drum parts and some video, and then he edits it together with 4 or 5 different musicians from around the world, and the final result's pretty impressive, because I mean, none of these people I've ever spoken to or have met.
Which is, when you think about it, it's like, I got this call from a guy in Russia who wants me to play drums. Yeah. Before all of this, you think, well, that seems odd, but you were really starting to see, almost a surge in, cross global collaborations between a number of different artists. So how important is it, or how exciting was it for you to be, in part of these, literally global collaborations?
I mean, it's pretty cool because the ones with Igor in Russia, they're all cover songs, none of which I've ever played or in some cases ever heard. So it's just a matter of learning the song, charting it out, and then tracking it. But it opens it up a lot. Like basically, what I always tell people is I could have said no, but I said yes, and spent the time to do what I could on it.
Now, when it comes to setting up your house to be able to record drums, remotely, whether it be for recordings or for videos and the like, there has to be, it's not like, I'll take a guitar, I'll plug it into a Focusrite, and I'll be good to go, right? It'll just, fix it. You've got to actually put some, a lot of mics into actually soundproofing the house. How much goes into prepping a house, or at least a room, to be able to record a full drum kit?
Well, I think surprisingly, you don't have to do a lot, in the sense that where I am now, this is what I call my studio, which just is my basement. And in front of me, I have a full drum kit. I run 16 mics in the room. Most of them are on the drum kit. I have some room mics as well. But the noise level that you would get in the house is pretty low. Usually what I'll do is I'll turn off the furnace or the fan just to try and make sure there's no extra noise bleed. But drums are so loud too at the same time that once you're playing, you actually won't hear anything other than the drum mics. So even the room mics are drowned out by the volume of the drums. I have some soundproofing on the roof, but I mean, my wife and the stepkids, I do it all the time. No one. I always feel bad because I feel like I'm too loud, but no one complains ever. But once you have the equipment, that's the thing, is you can do this so easily now with a couple rack mount, analog to digital converters and the mics. But yeah, I'm running 16 channels of drums from the basement right into a computer, and it's really not complicated once you learn how the stuff works. I still learn every time I use it.
Now, you mentioned the gear, and for those of us, for those of our listeners who are actually watching this on YouTube, there are a ton of drums, behind you. Obviously, over your career, you've had a chance to actually, get all this gear and have the resources you need in order to be able to put it together. But how picky are you when it comes to certain drum sounds, certain cymbal sounds, and do you swap the gear out depending on who you're performing with?
Good question. From time to time I do that. For live, I have what I will call a smaller kit and a bigger kit. And really the only differences are the size of the drums. Generally, and this is kind of drum nerd stuff, but I'll go for a bigger, 24-inch kick drum, 13-inch rack tom, and a 16 and 18-inch floor tom. And then with, 3 or 4 cymbals. Usually I like 18-inch crash cymbals. I like the bigger crash cymbals. And then the smaller kit is a 22-inch kick drum, a 12-inch rack tom, 14-inch floor, 16-inch floor. It's just less mass and smaller drums. But I do switch it out. I think the only person that notices this stuff is me. I don't think anyone else in the band or in an audience would ever notice.
Now, when it comes time to, picking which kit you're going to go with, what plays into it more? Who you're performing with or the room that you're playing in?
Room that you're playing in. I actually, if it's a smaller room, I'll use the smaller drum kit, and I have a different set of cymbals, which I call my quiet set of cymbals. They're just a special Sabian FRX series. They're actually made to be lower decibel cymbals. So yes, I do plan ahead for that. So if it is a smaller room, try and use the quieter crash cymbals. It allows the sound techs to get the vocals and less bleed from the cymbals to go through the vocal mics.
Obviously, when you're playing, larger shows, it's not that much of a big deal. But when you're playing smaller clubs, smaller venues, that are like, all right, let's bring the band in every Friday or every Saturday kind of thing. Mm-hmm. How often have you heard someone say, "Can you turn the drums down?" And does it make you just shake your head every time?
Yeah, I mean that's just kind of a fact of life. Drums are a loud instrument. I would say I don't intentionally play hard or loud. It's just that's where my backbeat, my swing is. So it's a conscious effort on my part to kind of bring it back a bit and play as dynamic as I can for the situation and for the room. But yeah, the drums are too loud. I've heard more times than I can count.
Yeah, I'll just turn the rock knob down. Yeah,
Yeah,
that'll
exactly.
happen.
Yeah.
Let's take a step back in time. And one of the probably the bigger known artists that you've had a chance to work with was Artificial Joy Club.
Hmm.
So if we could talk about like when that started to take off, what was that like?
Okay, well, that and Artificial Joy Club was kind of a second name for Sal's Birdland. Sal's Birdland was the band. And what had happened, and we had a record deal with Warner Discovery in the US as Sal's Birdland. And when we recorded I guess at that point, we're second, third, well, I'll just call it the second album as that lineup. Um, it had been delivered to Warner Discovery and they didn't like it. So what happened was basically got shopped around. We had probably about 6 or 8 different major U.S. labels fly to Canada to come and see us showcase, perform for them. Um, and this was around, I'm going to say 1997. And the last showcase we did, which we weren't actually going to do, was for Interscope Records. And 4 days later, we were on a plane, first class, to LA, and sitting in Jimmy Iovan's office with them just telling us how much they liked the record and things like that. So we had changed the name just before that, just to kind of not have any sort of obligations to anyone else, just kind of making it a new band. Um, Once the band signed to Interscope Records, then things just took off. We spent a lot of time in Los Angeles rehearsing, doing photo shoots, meeting people, and then basically we were out on the road for a good probably about 4 or 5 months straight, and then went to Europe about 5 or 6 times doing festivals and all sorts of stuff. So it kind of all happened fast. It was good. We had good times. I regret not keeping in touch with a lot of the people that I met during that time. Just everything was happening so quickly, and it was great times. I had fun, learned a lot. Um, yeah, like there's so much about it that happened all at the same time. It was really uh, a special time and interesting, and the how quick it happened was kind of mind blowing. Something like that doesn't happen very often.
And now when you take a look at some of the tours and the gigs that you got a chance to play with them, Lollapalooza, Second
Hmm.
Stage, Pink
Hmm.
Pop Festival. So when it comes to those very large stages, and then and huge audiences, do you prefer that, or do you prefer being I know it's a bit harder when you're the drummer and you're kind of back from the stage a bit, but like, do you prefer the large stages or do you prefer like the small, more intimate venues?
Oh no, I like large stages. Yeah, it's the sound, it's the power. It's having. I mean, now it's pretty much all in ears, so it doesn't really matter. But back in the day, it'd be like 2 stacks beside me for my monitors, and just the punch back from the drums and the band blasting on both sides. Just yeah, it feels good. It feels right.
And the nice thing about in-ears too is that it allows the stage to be a lot quieter.
Hmm.
How what's the difference? Like, people see the drummers and all the amps on stage and they're like, oh, it's gonna be really loud out there. How quiet
Hmm.
do you prefer it on stage?
Well, on stage, being a drummer is probably the quietest spot in the entire room because all the sound's going forward. Um, on stage, it's nice to have controlled volume, and this is why I say, probably going back to playing with dynamics and being aware of the situation you're playing in, is you kind of mix yourself into the band, into what's going on. Um, but yeah, big stages, love it.
So from Artificial Joy Club in Salzburg you moved to, Tammy Raybould and Thermocline, two very different artists,
Yes.
both very, very good. So when it comes to, altering the style for a band like Thermocline, who, if you never had the chance to listen to the Thermocline's -1 album, it is phenomenal. I don't
Well,
know
thank you.
how you find that album today, but if you do have a chance to find it, and even the EP that came out before, it was a beautiful Prozac Shells. I remember,
Yeah.
great songs. And then you got Tammy Raybould, who was able to play Lilith Fair and all that, and like her EP, and then of course the preceding full length album with Loving You was a big single in itself. How do you approach two very different artists as far as that style goes?
I mean, it's always about listening, and the singer is the most important aspect in the entire band. I mean, no one, I always put it this way, is no one really cares who's playing drums or anything like that. I mean, my name's not on the poster, so it's you're brought in to do a job, and you do the job as best you can, and that's from listening and adapting, and altering your style in the sense that, yeah, for Thermocline, I was playing much heavier than I would have been playing with Tammy Raybould. Not to say that with the Tammy Raybould band, we did get to rock quite a bit, and there was, giving her, the guys in that band were great too.
Considering the number and the scope of the different artists that you have, recorded with or performed with or just, worked with in general, how much do you relate to the documentary Hired Gun?
Oh, yeah. I, I mean, it's my life on a different scale, essentially. I think I've always kind of been a freelance drummer, I call it, where people call me, I record, I play live, I do whatever I can to make everyone have a great time and perform as best as possible. Uh, but yeah, Hired Gun. I haven't seen it for quite a while, but yeah, that's totally what it is.
And of course, like one of the biggest movies as of late was Sound of Metal.
Yes.
And then basically the concept of losing your hearing.
Yeah.
Have you ever noticed playing drums for as long as you have? Have you ever noticed that any loss in hearing for yourself, or do you purposely like O-ring your drums or keep your in-ears at a certain volume in order to protect that hearing?
I'm always aware of it. I'm sure I have lost some hearing. There's no way for doing this long that you would not lose any hearing. Um, in-ear wise, the biggest trick with those is not to turn them up too loud. A lot of times, as soon as you put your in-ears in, you want to crank them up to kind of cover everything, or I don't even know how to describe it, but it's so easy to make turn them louder than they need to be. So it's just conscious effort always to be aware of that.
As someone who performs and records as much as you do, what does it take to be able to kind of keep in, for lack of a better term, gig shape?
Well, practicing, thinking, mental preparedness, that's a big one. Rest, which I don't always get enough of. Working out wise, I mean, I think everyone over the last year and a half has kind of slacked off, I think, if I can say that. I know I have. It's a lot of hanging out and eating. But yeah, just preparing, like just warming up for a gig is very important. A lot of times don't have time to do that, but it's very important to do.
Now, we've had musicians on from different parts of the country, talk about what the scene is like there. So I'm going to ask you, from your perspective, if you were to describe, the Ottawa music scene then, during the Salzburg land, Artificial Joy Club days, and then compared to now.
Well, I think now I might be somewhat disconnected from it, you know, as the new era of people come up. Um, Back then, there was a lot of tight knit community with bands and sharing gigs and helping everyone out. I'm sure it's the same way now. I think just as time goes on, um, I'm probably not exposed to the same type of things that I was to back then, as in going to different clubs to see different bands. I mean, I see stuff on Instagram and Facebook, so I'm aware of people in Ottawa and what everyone's doing. I just probably don't know them personally. So I think the personal aspect of it has changed over the years for me. So there might be a whole different scene going on nowadays than it was back then that I just might not be aware of just because I'm not in that loop anymore. It's a bit depressing, but I think that's where I would put it. It's just maybe a lack of awareness of some of the stuff that's going on these days.
Across the board, you're seeing venues that over the past year and a half have had trouble staying open.
Yeah.
So as a performer, are you concerned that the number of venues that were there beforehand, aren't going to be there when we're back to what, not normal, but at least what normal used to feel like a little bit?
Yes, that is definitely something on my mind, and I've talked to different musician friends about. Um, it is worrisome, the more places there are to play is definitely what you want. And I mean, as an artist in a band, when you're playing at a venue, I mean, you're not only there to um, bring in an audience, it's helping out the establishment with keeping them open. But it definitely worrisome is places to play diminishing after this is all over.
One of the cool projects that you had a chance to kind of be involved with, even as just a performer, as one song on it, were the unmuted CD collections
Yeah.
that came out, I guess, probably around, I guess, 96, 97-ish kind of thing.
Yeah.
When you think about, obviously music back then, a CD like that had the ability to be able to help so much by raising money because people would go out and actively buy CDs. Do you think that, the proliferation of streaming services, the lack of urgency of people going out and actually buying music, do you think that, that has actually hurt the ability for music, even on a local city scene, to be able
Yeah.
to help kind of causes like that?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying, and it's kind of weird because it almost feels like music is free now. Like everybody gets it, even if you're paying your $12 a month for Spotify or Apple Music. I mean, I have all subscriptions to that stuff. I mean, it's just the way the world works now. But in a sense, like to me, it seems like music is free, and no matter what, you can listen to any song you want at any time. Um, in terms of doing some sort of benefit CD like those unmuted records were, I don't see it happening the same way nowadays. I mean, what are you going to make a playlist of different artists? And I don't know how you would generate any sort of charity efforts to try and collect money for causes. I mean, I guess there's ways to do it. It's just, it seems like it's completely different than it once was.
Let's go back to young Andrew. So pre being in bands and pre being a drummer, Andrew, do you remember, and I asked this of many of the guests because I always find it fascinating to find out, do you remember the first time going to a record store, whether it's Sam the Record Man, HMV, Record Runner, or CD Warehouse if you get your Ottawa references there, but with your own money, like money that you saved, whether it was allowance, Christmas gift money, whatever, and buying an album for yourself? Do you remember the first time you've done that?
Yeah. And my brother and I used to go take take the bus to downtown to all the record stores on Bank Street and then down onto Rideau Street pretty much every weekend to buy new records of some sort or imported records. I do remember doing that, and it was a big part of my growing up. Don't ask me what the first record I bought was because I actually don't remember.
What were some of those early musical influences for you?
Oh, it was, 80s metal. It was Judas Priest. What else? Like Queensryche, Kiss. I was always a big Kiss fan. Yeah, I can't remember now, but like Iron Maiden, all that stuff, like Cinderella.
I do have to ask, since you did mention Queensryche, how much did you want a drum kit with the chains along the cymbals?
Totally,
yeah,
totally.
The Scott Rockenfeld special.
Yeah, that's such a great band, man. Like even Operation Mindcrime. Now, I just listened to it recently. It's such a good album.
For someone who's wanting to get into becoming, a professional musician, doesn't matter the instrument, but being a professional musician, not just like being in a band and playing a couple of gigs, but actually making a career of it. What advice would you give to them?
Get out there and meet people, be versatile, learn different styles of music, be open to everything. Learn how to slug your gear around. There's so many things, but it's basically you just need to be open and versatile and diverse to what's going on, and you pretty much will always be able to do something.
And to those who are thinking of doing that as a career, what are some of the misconceptions you want to, very quickly say, no, it's not exactly like that?
Well, everyone just thinks your life is a party all the time because they see you in the moment of your playing. They don't see the beforehand, the preparation, the practicing, the rehearsing, the slugging gear around, and when everyone's gone home, you're tearing down gear and loading out, things like that. It's really not what it seems like. It's a lot of work, and you have to be dedicated to it, and you have to want to do it to make it worthwhile. It's hard. It's hard work. Easy. It's a great thing to do, but it is hard work.
Now, when it comes to getting calls, sometimes at the last minute to fill in as a drummer, how much notice do you need for a typical gig? And has there been any situations where you got the call, you're like, okay, I said yes, I'm not quite exactly sure if I'm going to be able to pull this off?
Yeah. Things have happened. So first of all, a few weeks notice is good. I've subbed in on a month's notice. I've subbed in on a week's notice. I've subbed in on a day's notice. So again, preparation. I do not want to take a gig subbing in where I have no idea what the songs are going to be, for example. So that's my personal preference is I like to know the material. So I will chart it all out, try and play through it a couple times on my own before playing live. And like that, every time I sub in for someone, I know it's going to be a pain. It's going to be a lot of work. Has there ever been a time where I accepted a gig and felt maybe unprepared or uneasy, unknowing if I can play all the material? There's been situations like that where I will chart something out and be like, well, I can play this, but I might need to practice it. Or I'll be at a gig subbing in with someone, and in the back of my mind going, I wish I would have practiced these parts a bit more. There's never been any major train wrecks that I've had, and being musicians, you kind of know what to play where, and if there is some sort of mistake, you just kind of play through it and pretend like it didn't happen.
For all the recordings that you have performed on, are there any that really stand out as ones where you're exceptionally proud of and you would sit there and as kind of hold up as the, this is the Andrew Lamarche pinnacle of drumming?
Oh boy. It's a tough question. I'm proud of everything I've been part of. I think the drumming on the Thermocline -1 album, I think at the time when I listen back to it now, there was some cool stuff going on. I played in a band called Order of the Day for a little while. We did some recording that has some what I would call more advanced than what I usually do. Some of the Robert Farrell band stuff I think has some good drum takes that I've done. Yeah, that's kind of a tough question. There's a lot of stuff. I think when I hear it, I take pride in what I've done with different people and feedback to create that, and just my own individual creativity to make that happen. But if someone wanted to listen to straight ahead, cool drumming on good songs, I mean, the Artificial Joy Club album, Melt, is probably a good one to point to.
Which, of course, leads us to the big question of the podcast that everybody gets. So, Andrew Lamarche, if you had to introduce yourself to a total stranger, but instead of saying, "Hi, I'm Andrew, I rock," you basically you hand them a mixtape, and on that tape are songs that tell the story of you. What songs are on that tape, and why are those songs there?
Well, I thought about a couple songs just as you were talking there about that. I'm not really a lyric guy. Let me tell you that. I don't know any lyrics. I never retain them, but I know the melodies of songs and I know bits and pieces of lyrics, but I could not tell you any lyrics to any song ever. But on that note, if there was a situation like that, some of the songs I think I would put on there, Mountain Climbing by Joe Bonamassa, because it's always, always trying to move forward, feeling like stuff's against you all the time. The Sound of Muzak by Porcupine Tree. I don't know if you know that one.
I don't actually.
And it's kind of prog rock. Gavin Harrison on drums, great band, British band. It's, one of my favorite things about music is just chilling out and listening to an album or songs with headphones on and not doing anything else, just like really listening deep into the instrumentation and the production of everything. The Show Must Go On by Queen, because no matter
such
what,
a good song.
No matter what, the show must go on. It doesn't matter. I always say, some of my friends know this, there's no sick days in rock and roll, right? So no matter if you're booked for a gig, you're not calling in going, sorry guys, I have a headache, can't make it. Things like that don't happen. Be Yourself, Audio Slave. It's kind of a life thing. Exhausted by the Foo Fighters. I think, was that on the first album, second? It's kind of the last track on one of the albums. I can't remember what album it's on. Again, just my lack of sleep and always doing stuff and just never feeling really well rested. I'm not a great sleeper. I think about stuff a lot, and mental practice of playing drums even, like, sometimes. What else would I say? My Life, Billy Joel. There's a classic rock song. Again, just always doing your thing, not being so pushed or pulled in different directions from friends. And on the more quiet side, I would say Easy Silence by the Dixie Chicks, because I can be pretty quiet a lot of times. That's, and that song just is really emotional and cool, and I dig it. I don't know why. It's one of those songs that I can listen to and just be like, oh man, it's such a great song. That's what I do if it was that, and if it was a a similar situation of About Me drummer wise, it would be like songs like that would Steve Jordan played on. He's played with like John Mayer Trio and Keith Richards and everything. Jim Keltner, again, Traveling Wilburys, BB King, tons of stuff. I can't even remember everything he's played on. Um, going back to a kid, I mean, it was all about Peter Criss of Kiss, which then as time went on, it was Eric Carr and then Eric Singer and things like that. Like, I like the straight ahead drumming. I do appreciate all types of music, but just straight ahead groove stuff, Steve Ferrone, Jim Keltner, Steve Jordan, things like that.
As a drummer, and I have to ask, when you go to see a show as a fan, do you kind of focus in on the drums, or do you take in the whole show? And for a larger rock show, do you love, or do you just tolerate the long drum solo?
Yeah, going to concerts, I've been to tons of concerts in my life, but yeah, definitely do tend to focus on the drums, the drummer. Drum solos, I kind of like. I'm going to admit, I kind of dig it because it's just kind of cool. I know it's in situations like that, it's like everyone in the band gets a little break. It's just set change, costume change, whatever you want to do. But no issues with drum solos on my part. Have I ever done a drum solo? No. Would I? No.
As a fan, as someone watching, would you rather see a very technical Neil Peart kind of drum solo, or would you prefer something a bit more like a very flashy, showy, Tommy Lee style drum solo?
Yeah, they both have their points. I mean, seeing Neil Peart play, like, his solos are just fantastic. Like, that guy, such a fantastic drummer. I mean, everyone knows that. You listen to any of the Rush songs, it's just fabulous. So I do love the Neil Peart drum solo. Tommy Lee drum solo, no issues with. I think for what it is, it's totally cool. He's doing his thing. And I mean, if you think about it, Tommy Lee is such a great rock drummer. Like, if you listen to some of the grooves on some of the Motley Crue stuff, like, he doing such great stuff. I think Tommy Lee's a fantastic drummer.
As we're coming out of the pandemic, and live music. I mean, for our listeners in the States, it's a little different because you see the concerts and the tours and the festivals that are being booked. And in Canada, it's a little different. We're still a little held back. We're not quite there yet. But as we start to emerge from all of this, what is on I haven't done this for a year and a half, I need to do this list?
Learn how to set up my gear again if I need to, if I don't have a tech. And it sounds ridiculous, but it's true. Moving my gear and setting it up if I need to. Playing live again, just getting out there and doing stuff. I have been seeing the dates fly in from different US tours, which is really cool. But I think just getting back out there, like, I think I want to sit down and hack away for a week or two on my own, kind of refresh my memory on how to play. I remember how to play. It's just, it's different. When you play all the time live, it's different than playing in the studio or rehearsing. So I think it's just refreshing my stamina, maybe.
Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time, coming on the show and talking to us. Where can we, hear you as far as your current bands go? What can we hear that's available on Spotify, and how can we reach you online?
Okay, well, that's good question. AndrewLamarche.com is my website, where there's a bunch of news stuff. There's tour dates, I guess, when they're going to happen again. But I do have an audio page on there, which actually has Apple Music, Spotify, SoundCloud, and the band. Oh man, I can't remember. Anyway, there's a whole list, and in where it's possible, where stuff that I played on is on those services, there's playlists of all that stuff. Again, there's probably some things missing, but there's a lot there. I have videos, lots of YouTube stuff. And so, yeah, website, I'm on Instagram, andydrums.com, on YouTube, all that. I'm everywhere, but nowhere. How does that sound?
Works for me. Andrew, thank you so much for this. And to our listeners, thank you for listening to the Made You a Mixtape podcast. If you're listening to us on an audio streaming service, you can watch this entire interview over on YouTube. But if you're watching us on YouTube and marveling at all the drums behind Andrew, you can listen to us on any of the audio streaming services, including Good Pods. If you're a podcast fan, you want to download Good Pods. It is a phenomenal app for discovering and listening to and rating and supporting your favorite podcasters. So that's Good Pods app. This has been the Made You a Mixtape podcast. I'm your host, Jason. Andrew, thank you so much for this. We will see you all next time.